Former CIA Green Beret Joe Kent is on with us to talk about the Afghanistan situation. What happened, and are we going right back into a 9/11 situation? All this with Joe Kent right now.
Joe Kent is our guest. He is a combat veteran, Green Beret, also served as a field agent in the intelligence community. He lost his wife in the service of our country. He is a father and is running for Congress out of his district number 3. Good morning to you, Mr. Kent.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Praise be to God. I can imagine what might have been going through your mind when you saw the video coming out of Afghanistan. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who's had some experience in our recent post-9/11 wars, global war on terror, or just really followed the situation very closely over there, probably saw this coming. You know, we've known for quite a while that things aren't the way that our decision makers and our policy makers like to portray them on the ground. Really the bottom line is, I mean, it's a long and complicated issue, but right now we had a plan to get out in May under the Trump administration. People can shoot holes in that plan or talk poorly of that plan. That's fine, but there was a plan in place to get out in May. Biden came in and for political reasons didn't want to give Trump a political victory by following his plan. So he turned to his generals and said, hey, will this Afghan military hold until September? Because I want to change things and get us out in September. The military lied to him and said, yes, sir, they'll hold till September. This is a well-equipped, well-trained Afghan army. We've been doing this for years. Sure, it'll hold. They lied. They knew that they were lying. And then Biden announced and gave the Taliban 3 prime months of fighting season time. I think people need to understand that Afghanistan is a mountainous country. When the snow starts to melt and recede, that's the fighting season. So we gave them 3 prime months to plan this offensive and to gradually they rapidly took the ground to get us to this current situation. But that's what's going on right now. And so seeing all that, I mean, to me, it's tragic, but we're seeing lie after lie that's been told for the last nearly 2 decades kind of come to light and unravel, because lies always come out, right? And that's the situation that we're in right now. And there's a massive amount of human tragedy taking place because of those lies.
You know, I get that there's going to be opinions all the way around on this type of a topic. You know, the people tend to hold the party line of their political perspective, and I get that. But as a guy who served in the Marine Corps, I know that the enlisted guy, you know, the private, the lance corporal, the corporals, if he were to be caught sleeping on watch, especially in a combat zone, there'd be no question how he would be held accountable. It wouldn't even be a blip on the radar. He would be court-martialed for that offense. And yet, at the scale that we're seeing, the loss of lives, the loss of literally millions and millions of dollars of U.S. tax-paid for military hardware, the loss of this country, the loss of those people, who will be held accountable for this? Will anybody be held accountable? What do you think, Mr. Kent?
I think right now we have to push as hard as we possibly can for accountability. I mean, that's going to start with holding our elected officials accountable at the ballot box, because I think that's the only way we can truly hold them accountable. And then we need to elect people that understand the full scope of what's happened, not just here in Afghanistan, but really with our post-9/11 wars, and push for accountability from the military-industrial complex. Because, like you said, there's a partisan lens here for sure, but the failures in Afghanistan, the failures in Iraq, the whole global war on terror, it's been bipartisan. It really, really has. I strongly support President Trump's America First agenda. I think Trump's the first president because he was an outsider that went in there and said, we got to do things differently and get people out. But we saw the military-industrial complex. That's why my wife was killed, to be honest with you. She was killed a month after Trump attempted to get our troops out of Syria the first time. So had the orders of the commander-in-chief been followed and Secretary of Defense Mattis and other unelected bureaucrats not turned on Trump, she'd be alive. 3 other great Americans that she was killed with would be alive to this day. So I think that we have to, the one good thing that can come out of this crisis right now that we're seeing is that it's going to be hard for them to cover up from all these lies, and we, the people, must demand accountability.
I'm sorry for your loss, by the way. It must have been an incredible, tragic, heartbreaking situation. You and your wife, I guess, were deployed at the time, and your kids were back home?
We were deployed to different locations. So she was in Syria. I was somewhere else. and yeah, she was killed. I was on a shorter trip, but yeah, long story short, she was killed, and then I was informed of her death while I was overseas, and had to fly back and resign from my job in the CIA to take care of our children. So yeah, that's kind of how I got to this point. And then, like I said, she was killed after Trump attempted to get her troops out. So I, from there, despite all the grief I was going through, I felt that it was my responsibility to kind of start speaking out on behalf of what I had seen in my nearly 2 decades on the ground fighting these wars, and the way I saw the establishment kind of turn on Trump to keep our troops there.
I enlisted in the Marine Corps in '91. I was 17 because we went to the Gulf War. Adrian, how old were you in 1991? Well, how old?
1991, I was negative 8 years old, or negative 7 years old, rather.
How old were you when we invaded Afghanistan?
I was, I think, 3 or 4. Mm-hmm.
So what? I mean, this must be interesting to you.
Yeah. So my question, Joe, is, for people my age or younger, what do we need to know about Afghanistan? Because we only started hearing about Afghanistan when we were, like, I wasn't interested in politics. I didn't know anything going on, especially internationally, better yet, nationally, until I was like 18. So I'm only hearing about these kind of things the last 3 to 5 years. So what do we need to know about the history of us being in Afghanistan? Get us caught up.
Oh man, that's a tough one. So I think really the bottom line is, like, Afghanistan, as I think most people know, is where bin Laden and Al Qaeda, they're not Afghans themselves, but they found some sanctuary because of the Taliban, and they were able to deploy different cells that ultimately led to the attack of 9/11. So right after 9/11, we went to Afghanistan for all the right reasons. I think a lot of times in our dialogues about the wars, Afghanistan and Iraq get kind of rolled into this same ball of wax, which they can as far as like the post-invasion phases go. But Iraq was kind of all based on lies. I mean, I say kind of. Iraq was all based on lies. After 9/11, we did need to go into Afghanistan. That's where bin Laden was. That's where the leadership was. We had a clear-cut mission. We accomplished that mission relatively quickly. We went in. We partnered with some guys that were anti-Taliban fighters that we had maintained relationships with, thanks to the CIA. Special Forces and CIA went in right away, toppled the Taliban, took out some senior leadership of Al Qaeda. Then things went off the rails. Al Qaeda escaped through the mountainous region on the border of Pakistan into Pakistan, and then we made a decision, really without the consent of the American people, because after 9/11, Congress authorized us to go to war to pursue Al Qaeda. Bin Laden escapes into a country. We're providing foreign aid to Pakistan. And Bush decides somewhere late 01, early 02, that we're going to stop and we are not going to pursue them into Pakistan. We are going to stay in Afghanistan, and we are going to build a nation there. And this nation is going to be a democratic nation kind of built in our own image, and it's going to become this beacon of stability that's going to ultimately deter terrorism. And then right after that, we decided, hey, we need to go to the center of the Middle East and take out the regime of Saddam Hussein, and a bunch of lies are told based on that. But that's kind of how we got to this point. Afghanistan kind of gets forgotten about, mostly because we did a good job initially of kind of kicking the Taliban's butt. And so the Taliban sort of went to ground. We invade Iraq. Iraq becomes an absolute disaster that sucks up the majority of the U.S. government's, I would say, bandwidth and resources. Taliban starts to come back in Afghanistan, and it doesn't become a priority again pretty much until the Obama administration, because Obama, he didn't have the original sin of the Iraq war on his record, so he was really eager to jettison Iraq. But he didn't want to look weak, because Democrats never want to look weak, and so he said, okay, we'll go back into Afghanistan to sort of finish that. But the same cast of characters that sold this whole idea of nation building to the Bush administration, their underlings and the people that they mentored are now in senior leadership positions of the national defense establishment, the Pentagon, the intelligence agencies, et cetera. And so, wouldn't you know it, the set of tools we decide to use in Afghanistan, it's the same one we use in Iraq. We say counterinsurgency, and for me, the bottom line as a special operator, we can do limited small strikes, and we can be very successful at them. But there's not a lot of money for the military-industrial complex and small intelligence operations, small special operations strikes. The military-industrial complex makes its money on these massive invasions, these massive occupations, building up other armies. And so that right there, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so we go back into Afghanistan. Well, we didn't really leave Afghanistan, but we redouble our efforts in Afghanistan on nation building. And that's what I'm talking about with the lie after lie after lie. You can read the Afghan papers from 2019. It's all the classified documents that were leaked to the Washington Post that basically say from the very senior levels that we were lying about Afghanistan to decision makers.
Insane.
And we just continue. If a lie is told long enough, it becomes the truth. And that's kind of how we get to this point.
You'd think we'd learn. I mean, think of Ho Chi Minh, mid-1940s. We train Ho Chi Minh. We turn around and got to fight him. We lose nearly 60,000 lives in the process. We trained Saddam Hussein. That didn't work out. How about Gaddafi, Mubarak, or Osama bin Laden? We trained all of these people, and we turned around and had to fight all these people or have issues with all these people, and it cost us dearly. And the big question that a lot of people are asking today was Afghanistan worth it at all? And the only opinions to that question, or the only responses that I've been paying any attention to, are the ones that are combat veterans, the ones that have had to bear the greatest burden in that. As a combat vet yourself, what say you? Was Afghanistan worth it? Should we have avoided it altogether?
Well, I mean, if we're going to take the emotion out of it, then we can easily say it wasn't worth it. I mean, I think that's just, if you're objective about it, it was not worth it. And I know some of my fellow veterans will probably be very angry at me for saying that, but as somebody who's become a policymaker, I feel obligated to say it wasn't worth it. I say on a strategic big picture and moral issue, it wasn't worth it. But what I'll say to all my fellow veterans who volunteered to go out there, especially after 9/11, you answered your nation's call. To you, like, it was definitely worth it to go serve your country. I think we have to separate those two things. I mean, for our own sanity, one, but then also if we're looking at the case to be made to get more people to serve our nation, and really the lifeblood of our country is young men and young women being willing to step up and say, hey, America, I will serve for you, I will fight for you, I'll die for you. But for us American citizens and then for our politicians, they have to safeguard that. We cannot squander it on these nation-building wars. We cannot squander it. If we can't articulate to the American people what the national security objective is, how we're going to accomplish it and how we're going to get out, then not one boot should leave U.S. soil, and not 1 ounce of blood or $1 should be spent on that objective until the policymakers figure that out and articulate it to the American people. So I think we just have to be sober and rational and say, like, this wasn't worth it, and we have to commit ourselves to never let this happen again.
Joe Kent is our guest. He's running for Congress back in his home district. His website is joekentforcongress.com. You can find out a lot more information about him there. But in the last several minutes of our conversation, I want to know what's coming next. I feel like we've spent 20 years there. How many billions of dollars have we put into this? And for the Taliban to just retake the entire country, like Alexander the Great, hardly even having to lift a sword practically. Golly gee whiz, do the Afghan men want to fight for their own country? I don't know. But now we're seeing them go. There are reports. They're going door to door. They have a hit list. They know who to look for. They know who participated in the special forces and intelligence work there, and they know who the translators are. They know who Christians are, and they're looking for them. And this is a very scary thing for those people. What comes next for these citizens of Afghanistan that we are leaving behind?
It's a terrifying. It's a nightmare scenario for them, and I think our first priority obviously has to be able to get all of our Americans out of country first. But we do have an obligation to those who fought and bled alongside of us to get them out, to get them somewhere safe. Now, I don't think that means we automatically transport every single one of them to America. I think that's kind of putting our people in danger. So we do have to do our due diligence. And that's, again, this just shows how horrible this plan was executed by the Biden administration and by the DOD. Like, there was no plan to even get our bare minimum was get all of our people out, and we still can't seem to do that or really know how many people we have on the ground. But we do have to take care of our Afghan allies. I mean, I think a good solution, too, is the Taliban aren't monolithic. They're not the boogeymen they appear to be, as in like they're evil, but they're not as powerful as they appear to be. There's a huge anti-Taliban resistance force because the Taliban is by and large a Pashtun movement, and so like your Tajiks, your Uzbeks, your Hazaras that are up in the northern part of the country, the famous Northern Alliance, is being reconstituted to some extent. So I think we need to get all of our people out, but through what we call Title 50 intelligence activities, I think we can support some of those folks to give them a fighting chance to keep the Taliban at bay. And that's just a more sustainable model. We can use them to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on as far as terrorism goes, and some limited strikes, and just to keep the Taliban busy fighting amongst themselves. But again, the main priority has to be to get our U.S. people out of there, and then our Afghan allies. Bringing our Afghan allies out of Afghanistan can be done without having to bring them all right to America. I think some of them have earned the right to come to America, but we just need to do our due diligence and our vetting properly. The model we're seeing right now, like thousands of Afghans just being thrown on airplanes and flown to America, is just absolutely
no idea who those people are. But we, according to some of the reports this morning, there are lawmakers suggesting that Americans in the country, it's on them to get themselves to the airport. And good luck, God bless, hope it all works out. But in the meantime, we're filling airplanes with people we have no idea if they were on our side or not.
Ridiculous. Yeah, again, this just goes back to the negligence. Like you said, if this were a private making decisions like this, or even something like falling asleep on guard duty, that they would have the books thrown at them. But instead, we have lawmakers that can just make statements like that, and it's like we have to have accountability for this, and we have to right now get our people out. I just can't believe that this is even an issue or a discussion, and Biden isn't moving heaven and earth right now to get all of our folks out. Like when the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman Joe Chiefs are like, well, we'll try and get everybody out until the clock runs out. Like, what the heck does that even mean?
Right.
And then the spokesman for the DOD is saying, like, we don't even know how many Americans are there. Like, what is going on?
But the British are sending in troops to get their people out. But we're out of time now. Joe Kent, we're grateful for your time. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. And we'll be praying for the repose of your wife, and of course your family, and of course your bid for Congress. Joe Kent for Congress.com is his website if you want more information about him. But God bless you, Joe. Have a great day.
If you like that interview, then be sure to check out some of our other interviews that you might find fascinating. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and share this interview with someone that you think will find this informative and inspiring. God love you.